So this video is going to be about type 1 and type 2 errors. So this is a really good example of what a type 1 and type 2 errors are. So let's say I say my null hypothesis is going to be not being pregnant, and my alternative is going to be pregnant. So if a male comes into to take up a pregnancy test, okay, well, what should occur is that it will say not pregnant. However, a type 1 error would be the result saying that you are pregnant. That is what we call a type 1 error. So the probability of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is true. Okay, so it is true that this male is not pregnant, and we concluded that he is pregnant. Now, a type 2 error is the opposite. So it is a probability of failing to reject the null hypothesis when it is false. So pregnant woman takes a test, and what it says is that she's not pregnant, when in reality, she really is. That is what a type 2 error is. Okay, so this deals with a lot of the things that we've been doing, which is hypothesis testing, and we've been assuming that when the p-value is low, we can reject the null hypothesis. Now, if I were to get another sample, that doesn't mean that I'm going to reject the null hypothesis. I can fail to reject. So we are having some sort of error. So when we try to scale up to the entire population, it's a little bit difficult, okay? Because we still don't really know anything. So our type 1 error, we actually have been dealing with type 1 errors already. Type 1 error is actually my alpha. So the significance level, so this significance level that we've been talking about all this time is just my type 1 error. Okay, so all this time where we've been setting 5%, 1%, 10%, we've just been setting our type 1 error all this time. Okay, now our type 2 error is going to be some other letter, and that's going to be beta. Okay, so beta is not something that we set. Beta, we need to know we need to know something else about the problem, but beta is just going to be our type 2 error. Now, the probability of correctly rejecting a false null hypothesis, so for me to correctly, that I did the correct way, is going to be 1 minus beta. So it is the opposite of the type 2 error. Type 2 error means that type 1 and type 2 error means that we got stuff wrong. Power of the test is that we got it right. So we got it right. We successfully rejected it, and that would be 1 minus beta. So it's the opposite of the type 2 error. Okay. So these can be a little bit confusing, especially because you need to wrap your head around all of these English terminologies. So here's my example. So suppose I increase my significance level from 0.05 to 0.1. What happens to my type 1 error? Okay, so my significance level, that's just alpha. So I increase alpha from 0.05 to 0.1. What happens to my type 1 error? Well, my type 1 error is actually alpha. So my type 1 error actually increases. Because, well, type 1 error is just alpha. I just increased alpha. So that's just my type 1 error. So that's just easy because that's just the same thing. So it increases. So my type 1 error is going to increase because that's just alpha. Now, what's going to happen with my type 2 error? Now, let's think about this. So alpha, what we did, we changed it from 0.05 to 0.1. Okay, that's my type 1 error. So we changed our type 1 error. We increased our type 1 error. So the type 1 error says that it's just going to be the probability of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is true. So that means what I'm doing, I'm increasing the probability of rejecting the null hypothesis. So I increase rejection. That's what I'm doing. So what's going to happen with my type 2 error? So our type 2 error is the probability of failing to reject. So, well, I'm not failing to reject anymore. Now I'm rejecting more often. So what's going to happen with my type 2 error is that now, since I'm not failing to reject, I'm actually just rejecting, that type 2 error is actually decreasing. Okay? So what this says is that as I increase my type 1, I'm actually decreasing my type 2. And vice versa, when I decrease type 1, I'm actually increasing type 2. Okay? So you can never be able to decrease both of them. Okay? Think about what would be able to decrease both of them. Okay? Now, the power. So what would happen to the power? Well, if I know that my type 2 decreases, and if I know also that type 2 and power are opposites of each other, then my power is going to increase. Okay? So that's what's going to happen. Okay? So that is one of the examples. Now let's do one more example. Okay? So this next example says, an inspector must choose between certifying a building as safe or not safe. Suppose these are his hypotheses. So my null hypothesis is that the building is not safe. HA, my alternative is that the building is safe. So what are the type 1 and type 2 errors? Okay, so what could possibly be my type 1 error? Well, type 1 error, if we go back up, type 1 is just the probability of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is true. Okay, so that means I rejected this and it was true. So the type 1 error is rejecting, or let me write it like this. So we say that it's true, so it's rejecting this. Okay, so rejecting when it is true. So it is true that it's not safe. Okay, so it's true. So it's true, but reject. Okay, that's what my type 1 error would be. So it would be that we say that the building is safe when it is not safe. That's my type 1 error. So what we said is so since we rejected this, we conclude that the building is safe. So, but my type 1 error says that it's actually true. So we say that the building is safe, but in reality it's not safe. That would be my type 1 error. So my type 2 error would be the opposite. So if we go back up, my type 2 error would be the probability of failing to reject, so not rejecting it when the null hypothesis is false. So null is false. So now this thing is false. So we don't reject. Okay. So it is false. So let's go back up. Failing to reject. So I do not reject, and it is false. False and do not reject. Okay, so what we do is that we say the building is not safe when it is safe. Okay, so since we know that this is not true, if this is not true, then that must mean that this is true, but we say that this is true. Okay, so hopefully that's making sense, because it's a little bit confusing in the very beginning. Okay, so which error do you think is worse? Okay, so is it going to be either type 1 or type 2? So type 1 says that we say that the building is safe when it is not safe. Type 2 says we say that the building is not safe when it is safe. Well, for me, type 1 is pretty bad. So type 1 error is pretty bad, because if someone tells you the building is safe, but it is not safe, then you yourself are not safe. Okay, which is different than saying, oh, well, it's not safe, but it really is safe. Well, you are not going to be in the building anyway. Okay, so that will be the worst type 1 and the worst type of error. Okay.